We begin with another tragedy at a plastic surgery clinic in South Florida.
A woman undergoing a procedure there has died after she was rushed to a nearby hospital. Local 10 News reporter Nicole Perez live now in Southwest Miami-Dade with our new details tonight. Nicole.
The clinic released a statement saying they are dedicated to investigating what happened here today and that they will be fully transparent with their patients and the public as soon as they get more information.
Miami-Dade police conducting a death investigation after they were called to a cosmetic surgery clinic Friday morning for a patient in distress. It happened just after 11 a.m. at F.A.C.h at 9300 Southwest 72nd Street. We spoke to Cochi Martinez, who said she heard from someone else that a woman died after having a procedure done.
This morning, some 26-year-old came in to do some buttocks implants. I'm going to take, I don't know, from part of her body, from her stomach to implant in her buttocks, and she died.
Can you talk about what went on today?
We tried speaking to one of the employees from the clinic, but they ignored us. According to police, emergency crews tried to resuscitate the woman before transporting her to Baptist Hospital, where she died. F.A.C.h released a statement saying in part, quote, "We are deeply saddened to share that an incident occurred at our Miami clinic today, resulting in the tragic loss of one of our patients during a surgical procedure. Our condolences, love, and support go out to her family during this difficult time."
They go on to say that they have performed thousands of surgeries, and this is the first and only death. Reporting live in Southwest Miami-Dade, I'm Nicole Perez, Local 10 News.
What's up, study group? Welcome to Black History Student. I'm your host, Black Butterfly. Today we'll be discussing Black women's fixation on Brazilian butt lifts, because there is a racist and sexist history of the procedure, which is also considered the most dangerous type of plastic surgery. With each generation, perfect body ideals change, manifesting new figure fads that too many Black women attempt to achieve, and the Brazilian butt lift is one of them. Now, the Brazilian butt lift is also called green plastic surgery procedure. This process includes a certified surgeon recycling fat by taking it from unwanted areas, such as that fat under your arm or maybe the fat under your chin, and redistributing it to the butt and hips. Dr. Stanley Okoro is a certified surgeon that specializes in the BBL procedure. He wrote a book called Brazilian Butt Lift. A leading plastic surgeon reveals everything you need to know about fat transfer. And he talks about the two kinds of fat, subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. With the BBL procedure, they can only work with the subcutaneous fat, the actual fat that you can pinch. And what they'll do is, with liposuction, they'll remove that fat and they'll put that fat in the butt or hips. The second fat, which is visceral fat, that's the fat inside the abdominal cavity around your internal organs and intestines. They say they can't remove that fat with liposuction. The only way to get rid of that fat is through diet and exercise. Visceral fat can also be genetically inherited. Historically, big butts and thick thighs were deemed nationally inadequate because they were associated with Black women. They were viewed as big, fat, and unattractive. History also reveals that white men have always secretly lusted after Black women with those large butts. Sarchi Sarah Bartman is exemplary of this fact, as she was an enslaved woman from the Hottentot tribe in Africa who had a small waist, a very large butt, and thick thighs, and white men revered her body so much so that they paid to touch and sex it. Now, there's a rich history behind her story, but in summary, Sarah was born in the 1770s in South Africa on a farm by a murderous French colonist named David Forey. He colonized the land her family had lived on, and once he died, Sarah's entire family was uprooted and sold to various slaveholders. Sarah herself, she went through a few slaveholders, but ultimately she ended up with a free Black man named Hendrik, and he purchased Sarah and fell into so much debt that he decided to use her as a stream of income. Now, I read this book that talked about this story by author Sabrina Strings. The name of the book is called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. And Sabrina says that Hendrik displayed Sarah to British soldiers at a local naval hospital where a large amount of military men would end up after they arrived to South Africa. And Sarah would be forced to reveal her naked body to the soldiers as they were literally dying. So on their dying beds, Sarah had to walk around and sashay in front of them to sexually entertain them before they croaked. She was considered an early 19th century exotic dancer, and for a fee, not only can they touch her, but they can possibly even have had sex with her. Over the years, Sarah was eventually taken to London, England, and the way she got there was just so terrible. There was a Scottish surgeon named Alexander Dunlop, and he deceived Sarah and Hendrik into signing some deceptive papers. They couldn't read, so they didn't know what they were signing. They signed some papers that they believed said that she would be paid to be a domestic servant and exhibited for entertainment. Similar to what she was at the Naval Hospital, she would just go to London and do it. She'll be paid and she'll be a servant. This man, Dunlop, never planned to pay or return Sarah. He was going to exploit and enslave her as he did. Now, when she got to London and she did her entertainment, she became so popular and so good, she got the name Hottentot Venus. And she was displayed in a cage like an animal and stood before men, women, and children, anybody who would pay to come and see her, just completely dehumanize her. Her body was actually considered a rare deformity because she was a small woman, but she had an extremely big butt. But here's the thing. Sabrina Strings says that she possessed the kind of shape which is most admired among her countrymen. That means at home, Sarah Bartman was that deal, okay? She was the Buffy of her time, okay? Buffy the Body. That was Sarah Bartman. She was that of her time in her home country. As a matter of fact, she was proclaimed to be the perfect specimen of the Hottentot women, and by association, all black women. So her body was indicative of the black woman in general. They say that this was the voluptuousness of her physique. Sarah was treated like a freak show throughout England, and eventually she got to France. Now, while she was in France, she encountered a man named Jorge Cuvier. And this man has been credited for solidifying Sarah's international fame as a totem of racial and sexual savagery. Her curvaceous and unique body was considered primitive to white men, especially Cuvier. They loved it, but she wasn't really human to them. Now, Cuvier, he was something else. He was the head of the Museum of National History, where he had this passion for anatomy. And Sarah, he looked at her both scientifically and exotically. He wanted to study her up close and personal, especially her elongated labia. Sarah wasn't having it. She refused it. It was bad enough that she's been displayed most of her adult life. She's been touched on. She's been sexed. She had all these things done. But if she had a choice, she said, no, you are not going to examine my labia. It's not happening. So he waited until she died on December 29th, 1815, and that's when he performed an autopsy on her body, and he made all sorts of claims. Back then, these doctors had no real basis for anything, so he documented that the cause of Sarah's death was excessive tippling, which basically suggests that she was an alcoholic. This man went on to write all sorts of books that were disseminated across the world about her body. Sabrina Strings says that in the book he quoted, "Her shape is all the more shocking because of the enormity of her hips, each measuring larger than 18 inches, and by the projection of her buttocks, which was larger than a half a foot. Now her hips and bottoms were, he adjudged, her principal deformities." He called her hips and her butt deformities because they were what he considered to be excessive. He claimed that her knees were also fat and a little not thin, but her shoulders and back he found graceful, and her arms were thin, and her stomach didn't protrude excessively. So that says that Sarah was fairly small. She had small arms, small shoulders, back, pretty petite at the top, but at the bottom she was really, really heavy with really, really thick thighs, big hips, and a big butt. Personally, Cuvier's description of Sarah sounds exaggerated, but the average shape of many curvaceous black women is indeed that. Women with big hips, big butt, smaller arms, smaller waist, especially women with BBL. Sarah was forced into exotic dancing because her body shape was just so admired by so many white people, and it made them a lot of money. Sarah made a lot of white men money. Likewise, women in strip clubs today make the most money with the bigger butts and thighs and smaller waists. Now, even after Sarah died, white people were so fascinated with her body that Cuvier actually mutilated and displayed it like a freak show. I read this book by Bell Hooks titled Black Looks, Race and Representation, where she talks about how the audience paid to see her butt and had fantasized about the uniqueness of her genitalia, her elongated labia. And when she died, they dissected and examined both her buttocks and her genitalia. but most of the fascination of her body was concentrated on the butt. Now, white men maintained sexual domination over Sarah and secretly lusted her curvy body to the point, like I said, they gained a lot of wealth on her behalf. Today, that same shape has been popularized, and it forces the women who lack it to resort to a Brazilian butt lift to achieve the shape. What's weird is the blackness of black women has always seemed odd to white men, but they've been hypocritical in their beliefs that Sarah Bartman / BBL look is unfeminine while simultaneously desiring it, okay? Especially those big butts. White men love big black butts, okay? And this is part of the reason that Brazilian butt lift's popularity has the most extreme sexual exploitative history that's racial at the core. Let's talk about Brazil in general, how racist Brazil is. So Brazil has the largest population of descendants of enslaved Africans in Latin America. And during the slave era, this was a problem for white elite Brazilians, okay? These were the descendants of Portuguese colonists, which is why to this day Brazilians speak Portuguese, especially in Rio de Janeiro. Now, Rio occupies 52% black people. That population is pretty much indicative of the racial makeup of Brazil as a whole. So Brazil is predominantly black. Now, these white Portuguese Brazilians wanted Brazil to solely occupy white-skinned people. But again, there was way too many more blacks than white. They couldn't just promote these ideas because they already had this infamous reputation of being one of the world's most unequal societies. So in 1888, after the elite white Brazilians finally freed African slaves due to global political pressures, they faced the issue of having too many free blacks roaming the country. So the intellectuals and politicians had to come up with an idea in order to get rid of some of this blackness. That's when they decided to promote miscegenation, or race mixing, to slowly lessen the darkness of black people. Their theory was to breed black people and biracial people with pure white populations over successive generations would eventually bleed out the blackness and ultimately manifest in all white Brazilian society. One political tactic they used was the national holiday Carnival. That's where Brazilians celebrate the country's multiracial formation. The holiday was a means to indoctrinate the world into believing that Brazilian society was not racist because they were celebrating race mixing. But in all actuality, the only reason they celebrated race mixing was because they believed it would lighten the black population. Race mixing became a national symbol for Brazilians to embrace. They embraced this hypersexual, mixed-race black woman known as the mulatta. The mulatta was a new acceptable light-skinned variant of a black woman who was thought would be the key to lightening blackness to the point of erasing it. Another tactic they used to dilute blackness was the pseudo-scientific construction of eugenics. I read this Washington Post article written by Professor Daniel Silva. He talked about the eugenics movement that was growing around the world that white elites latched onto as a solution to get rid of that blackness. He said that eugenics aimed to improve the population according to white elite standards. In Brazil, eugenic policies included the imprisonment and sterilization of certain groups and other measures. While white Brazilian elites hoped eugenics could help them achieve a form of what they saw as racial progress by making Brazilians of color more like white Brazilians, physiologically and culturally. When they came up with this idea, this was the catalyst to initiate the propaganda campaigns to destroy black women's physical features. This not only encouraged black women to hate themselves, but also for black men to find them physically undesirable. In this way, not only would black men prefer white-skinned women over black women and thus resort to lightening the black population, but black women would bleach their skin and surgically enhance their physical features to assume European standards of beauty. Professor Silva says that the prominent eugenist Renato Kell argued that plastic surgery was the cure to ugliness. Kell focused largely on women's bodies, specifically on sagging breasts and wrinkles, and especially what he and other surgeons to this day called the Negroid nose. His vision of improving women's bodies involved reshaping them to conform to an elite white standard of beauty. He said that this thinking helped create a plastic surgery industry in Brazil that had anti-blackness embedded at its core. And over the first half of the 20th century, many intellectuals and politicians came not only to support miscegenation, but to celebrate it. This celebration effectively became a propaganda tool to erase racial consciousness and drive the diverse people of Brazil to see themselves as Brazilian. This is why to this day, you encounter a black Brazilian and tell them they're black, and they will say, no, I'm not, I'm Brazilian. In this way, white elites have conditioned black people to rid themselves of their blackness and to take on a vague national Brazilian identity. One detriment to this is that when people see a black Brazilian, they don't see a Brazilian, they see blackness. And by disassociating from their blackness, they internalize racism. The internalization of racism, in turn, causes them to hate their blackness, to despise it, exactly as the white elites intended. This will cause black Brazilians to not only assimilate to white culture, but to acculturate as well. Alright, study groups, before I go on, please take a few seconds to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to know when new videos are released or when I go live. This is a significant way to support the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and do that for me. I'll take a moment of silence to let you do it. Okay, thank you, study group. I really appreciate your support. I really do. Now let's continue. After white Brazilian powers erased blackness and replaced it with the Brazilian nationality, their next goal was to sexualize the female Brazilian butt, making it the most revered in the world. They were so successful in objectifying Brazilian women's butts that to this day, Brazilian women are believed to possess the most beautiful figures in the world, and most men dream of having access to them. Professor Daniel Silva says that intellectuals, writers, and others declared Brazilian women's buttocks the national passion or national preference in terms of sexual desire and desirable body type. To this day, there are actual beauty pageants in Brazil that's dedicated to the butt. And this whole thing popularized this racialized image that drove women to plastic surgery. In mainstream Brazilian television and magazines, including many dedicated to plastic surgery, surgeons rejoiced in success. This national rhetoric, crystallized in the form of the buttocks, became a marketing tool for surgeons in Brazil and around the world, lending aesthetic credibility to the surgeons and the results. The Brazilian surgeon named Ivo Pitangui, he's credited as the pioneer of the procedure and the first to teach it to other surgeons at a training center that he founded in 1960. At that point, Brazilian became the operative adjective in the procedure's name. But white elites always have to conjure a solution to their issues, so they found a way to profit from the black female physique and then charging to surgically replicate it. They called this procedure Brazilian butt lift plastic surgery. And believe it or not, it was white Brazilian women that exploded the BBL industry, appearing more and more physiologically like black women in white skin. And by the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the BBL hype made its way to the US and global popular culture. This was primarily achieved by white mainstream entertainers and black entertainers referred to as sambos, because their artistries are used to promote racial stereotypes about black bodies, femininity, and sexuality. Furthermore, samboism was systemically manifested by white people to not only distract black people from uniting to fight against oppression, but also for whites to exploit black entertainment for profit. Jennifer Lopez was the one to actually bring the black woman in white skin look to the US, but it was Kim Kardashian that solidified it and really popularized it. Kim Kardashian and other white skinned women that pretty much appropriate blackness for status and profit, they are responsible for spreading the BBL craze throughout the country. Then you have rappers who took those same white women with black bodies and put them in their music videos. Then they rap lyrics about body measurements such as 36, 25, 34. And that's when you have a 36-inch bust, 25-inch slim waist, and 34-inch hips. The butt is one of the most rapped about body features there is, associated to a multitude of epithets such as donk, apple bottom, fat ass cheeks, and everything else. So the way that I see it is, rappers instructed society to accept their ideal body measurements of a perfect female body, but their ideal measurements weren't inspired by white men. They said that the perfect female dimensions can be achieved with the Brazilian butt lift procedure. Rappers, with their vulgar lyrics and sexualized messages, were perfect pawns for the elites. Music is extremely influential as it can sway how people think and what they believe. I read a book by Dr. Youssef called The Art of the Brazilian Butt Lift, Evolve Your Beauty, Empower Your Life, where he talks about the significance of music on the brain. He said that music is so influential on the brain that the type you listen to actually has the ability to change the way you think and look at the world. It is the most appropriate tool for telling stories and expressing our deepest desires because it amplifies the words it carries. The story that today's music is telling us is that curvy and big is beautiful. Although global white elites have profited from and popularized female black bodies, black women that try to achieve this ideal body shape by getting a BBL suffers the most. Professor Daniel Silva says today, as in the past, it is women of color who suffer the consequences of the culture around BBL and its anti-black history. He said that the confluences of racial, gender, and economic marginalization render black women more vulnerable to receiving unlicensed treatment or surgery, for example. He goes on to add that non-black women often reap the benefits of the body type promised by the BBL. Black women may be socially and economically punished for it in a world that condemns blackness and demands that black women maintain respectable appearances, which often stands in for white middle-class presentation. Now, here's the thing. If a black woman, with or without a BBL, but she has a big butt, thick thighs, and a small waist, and she decides to go to a pool where there are predominantly white people, just her body, her presence, that shape, and that dark skin will make them uncomfortable. It will make them uncomfortable, and they will feel that she's dressed inappropriate. Even if she just has on a plain bathing suit, her shape creates so much drama and emphasis to the body parts, her beautiful shape, that it makes white people uncomfortable. But listen to what Professor Daniel Silva says. He says the high demands for the Brazilian butt lift and those seeking to capitalize on that demand, even if they are unqualified to offer them, have rendered it one of the most dangerous procedures. The history of the BBL reveals striking similarities in the white fantasies for controlling and consuming black women's bodies, both then and today. This is so unfortunate because when black people go to these exotic countries, they're so entranced by that exoticness and the beauty of the country. You know, they go to Brazil, Mexico, Dominican Republic. They go to these countries not recognizing that these countries are extremely poor. The average citizen in those poor countries suffers significantly more than the poorest person in the United States or in a Western country. So these people are going to these exotic and beautiful countries, but dismissing the poverty that surrounds them. There are medically licensed and certified physicians in underdeveloped countries, but there are even more that's not. Therefore, the risk to obtain surgical procedures of any sort in foreign countries simply isn't worth it. Although there are many risks, even fatal ones, associated with medical tourism, many doctors still suggest there are no risks associated with the BBL procedure, but the number of deaths linked to the surgery begs to differ. Many things could go wrong by having some sort of surgical procedure overseas. Dr. Stanley Okoro details in his book some of the medical concerns. He said that, first of all, medical tourism is on the rise, and many people are going to foreign countries for surgical procedures, including the Brazilian buttock lift. Some patients are not getting what they want. He said that you won't know the place where the surgery is being performed. How about the doctor? Is he or she well trained? Is the hospital or center clean? What about the regulations and the accreditation of the facilities? Who monitors them for safety? How about expired medications? What do they do with them? How will you follow the instructions of the doctor? Is there a direct means to communicate with the doctor? What if something goes wrong and you're all the way back in the US? You've had this work done across seas. He says that a recent survey of 400 U.S. plastic surgeons showed that the majority of doctors had treated patients that ensued after the patient had traveled abroad for plastic surgery procedures. But BBLs are equally dangerous here in the U.S., so much so that so many surgeons will not even perform the procedure. But there are still those that will, and a lot of the time they end up facing fatal complications with impunity. You don't really hear about these doctors unless you look for articles to read. You really don't see these BBL doctors being exposed for being either a fraud, killing patients, or just any type of medical misconduct. And the worst part is, although there are major health risks associated with the BBL procedure, most pro-BBL people tend to ignore them and just hope for the best. What about what happens to the body years after the surgery? Because I know some women have complained of constant body pains and discomfort that eventually forced them to remove the excess fat from their body. You got Black China and K. Michelle. They had their BBLs removed and living mostly in their natural bodies.
Let's start at the beginning. The truth of the matter is that you felt, as I understand, a certain amount of pressure to transform yourself in the music industry. Your voice speaks for itself. It is the voice. But you wanted to have a different appearance.
Before I even got in the business, I had this perception of how I should look, what it was supposed to be. So before my first record deal, I was determined, I need to get my teeth done, and I need a bigger butt, and all of this. I was already super curvy and had a butt. I just looked at certain people and felt like I needed more. So I was able to find a person and, a known person within the music industry that a lot of my favorites had used for these silicone injections. So for me, it was just part of the package of getting into the industry. So I never thought about any consequences. I never heard of any consequences. So I did it, and years passed. Like, I didn't have any health issues that I knew of until probably about 7-8 years later.
What did you start to see?
Well, I know one day when I woke up, my legs gave out and I couldn't walk, and everyone was running me to a hospital everywhere. They was like, she's perfectly healthy. Nothing's wrong with her. So I eventually took an MRI of my body and my bottom and everything like that. And they saw a foreign substance within my body. And you could actually see it on the MRI. So I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what that is. So that's when the journey started to get this out of my body. Some doctors felt like, leave it alone because we don't know what to do. Some doctors didn't want to be bothered or touch it. They knew how difficult it was going to be. So for me, I didn't want to look up, and it just kept getting worse and worse,
Let me ask you, while you were waiting to figure out what to do, I've heard people talk about migraines and then just feeling fatigued and the different things started to happen with their body. The person who did your surgery, as you understood it, was this by the book, or was this?
No, it was not. These are not legal. It doesn't matter where you go. These are not legal. For me, I thought I was doing it.
People will be shocked to hear, wait a minute, K. Michelle, she got a record deal, she's got some money, and she's going somewhere illegal.
And that's what it was. Like, it was the biggest of stars going to a particular person for this type of procedure. It wasn't like, I'm going to go get this cheap procedure to myself.
Wow.
Recently, rapper Lotto, she was doing an interview where she admitted she had a BBL surgery performed, but she advised Black women not to do it.
Don't touch your body. Don't touch your face.
I'm telling you, to all the young girls listening, all the women listening right now, I'm telling you from someone who's been there, done it. Find peace within your natural state.
Yeah, I definitely
Because you're going to find a flaw and another flaw
always.
and another flaw and another flaw. Surgery, any of that stuff is not a permanent fix.
And I think a lot of people think that it is. Like, they're like, oh, if I just get this, I'll be perfect. But it's like, I know from seeing everybody, that's not the case.
Baby, we still editing pictures.
Right.
We still having debacles in the mirror.
But how do you feel about people speaking on women with surgery? Like, making them feel like they can't speak about their bodies. Like, oh, I look good. And it's like, if you say that, they're like, well, girl, you got a BBL, or girl, you got a da-da-da.
I don't like that either, though. I don't like that
I don't
either. Like, I'm a very much advocate for women in general. Right. Surgery, natural, whatever.
For
like,
sure.
However you want to play it, just make sure that's what you comfortable with. But I just think surgery is so popular now.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying if I said that me doing music didn't have an influence on me. Like I'm constantly in the limelight, and I was so young. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You got to think I got my first big break at 16 on a rap game.
Mm-hmm.
Then Bitch from the South, all that started heating up. I was 19.
You're very impressionable at that age.
Yeah,
Sure.
And this coming from somebody who had all that stuff. I'm telling y'all, love yourself how you is first. If you wanna tweak, go for it. But make sure it's for you.
Make sure it's for you.
For that's the most thing I be trying to like remind you of. Don't be so gullible for the social media traps and whatever, because you're never going to be good enough for the outsider's eye.
That's true.
When I didn't have my surgery, they're like, oh, she's so bad-bodied and she shaped like her white side. What the fuck do that even mean? For real, what do that even mean?
Oh, my God.
And then when I got the surgery, it's, oh, she's botched. Oh, it's too heavy.
Right.
It just hurt.
You can never win.
You're never going to win. So just find peace within yourself. Whatever you want to do,
right? Do
that. And you're one of the people who I'd be like, I promise you, without the pressure on you, you would love yourself, your body, your natural state.
True.
Botched BBLs is another concern, making women appear unnatural and deformed after the procedure. There are women whose legs and thighs are not symmetrical to their modified butts and hips. Plastic surgeon Dr. Alex Earl calls the look diaper and ant booty.
So one of the things that you definitely want to avoid with a BBL is that dreaded diaper booty. A diaper booty is when just too much fat is added, okay, and the body can't hold it up, and then gravity takes over, and the booty just falls. And the other thing you want to avoid is what some people call the ant booty, okay? And that's when it just looks like it was just kind of stuck on there, and it doesn't flow with the thighs, and it doesn't look like it belongs to that patient's frame or foundation. So the new trend and what we do here at Pure Plastic Surgery is what we like to call an enhanced natural look, meaning an enhanced natural look to that patient's particular foundation, okay? We want to make sure that all the transitions are smooth and that the booty and hips flow with that patient's thighs and the rest of their body.
Despite the Lottos and the Black Chinas and the K Michelles that provide all the warnings to women to try to avoid that BBL procedure, you still have those that will argue and debate. I know a few people that got the procedure and they look natural, are healthy, and had no problems throughout the process. The doctor was licensed and certified. The office was clean and appropriate. The surgical room was sufficient and sterile, and everything was successful. So although BBLs can be dangerous in some cases, the risk is low based on my research. And I say, personally, I'm grateful to hear things positively worked out for those people because it could have been fatal.
Brazilian butt lift has been around for a long time. Explain the danger here.
It's extraordinarily dangerous. It turns out it's the most dangerous, not only plastic surgery procedure, it's the most dangerous operation there is with the highest fatality rate. And I'll tell you why. You take fat from one part of your body, typically the abdomen, you process it, and you inject in the buttocks. Sounds easy, right? The problem is there's these very small little veins in the buttock that lead directly to the vena cava, which is the major blood vessel that brings blood back from your body to your heart, to your lungs. If you get fat in those little vessels and it gets in the main vena cava and goes to your lungs, it's over. It's the most fatal operation there is. And I would advise there are other ways to get a full buttock besides that.
If it's the deadliest operation, period, are they giving warnings when they do this to people? I mean, are people adequately being informed about the dangers here?
Not in my opinion. Now, last year, before the pandemic, an international task force was gathered to warn all of Europe that this is such a dangerous operation. And in this country, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons started to talk about it. They sent out a few articles about it, and then everybody pretty much ignored it. But listen, it's super dangerous. You can do it in the gym. There are safe fillers to do it. I recommend people back away from Brazilian butt lifts.
There are ample situations of young black women traveling to Latin America to get BBL plastic surgery and end up gone because of various serious unforeseeable complications. I mean, you can get fat in your veins, you can get blood clots, your arteries can clog, or you can get an overdose of anesthesia. There was this one woman in an article published by Vibe named Janeiro Jayla Williams, and she was pronounced dead in October 2021. She had an overdose of anesthesia. It was at a place called Best You Now. It was a cosmetic surgery center in Plantation, Florida. And the worst part is the doctor who administered the anesthesia, he was actually medically restricted from doing so. Then there was another situation that the Shade Room reported on, a woman named Shakir Terry. She was a young mother and she owned a daycare that she built from the ground up called Many Blessings in Paradise. But she died after getting 2 cosmetic procedures, a Brazilian butt lift and a tummy tuck. She left behind a lot of family and friends, and it was really, really unfortunate. So there seems to be endless scenarios of black women expiring during or after a Brazilian butt lift surgery.
We begin with another tragedy at a plastic surgery clinic in South Florida.
A woman undergoing a procedure there has died after she was rushed to a nearby hospital. Local 10 News reporter Nicole Perez live now in Southwest Miami-Dade with our new details tonight. Nicole.
The clinic released a statement saying they are dedicated to investigating what happened here today and that they will be fully transparent with their patients and the public as soon as they get more information.
Miami-Dade police conducting a death investigation after they were called to a cosmetic surgery clinic Friday morning for a patient in distress. It happened just after 11 a.m. at F.A.C.h at 9300 Southwest 72nd Street. We spoke to Cochi Martinez, who said she heard from someone else that a woman died after having a procedure done.
This morning, some 26-year-old came in to do some buttocks implants. They're going to take, I don't know, from part of her body, from her stomach to implant in her buttocks, and she died.
Can you talk about what went on today?
We tried speaking to one of the employees from the clinic, but they ignored us. According to police, emergency crews tried to resuscitate the woman before transporting her to Baptist Hospital, where she died. F.A.C.h released a statement saying in part, quote, "We are deeply saddened to share that an incident occurred at our Miami clinic today, resulting in the tragic loss of one of our patients during a surgical procedure. Our condolences, love, and support go out to her family during this difficult time."
A woman says that a Dallas plastic surgeon basically botched her plastic surgery, leaving her in a wheelchair.
And now the Oklahoma nurse is seeking millions of dollars in damages after she says her life was changed forever. Our Brooke Rogers live in Dallas with her story. Brooke?
And Kaylee, this is the lawsuit. It was filed in Dallas District Court today. In it, the patient says what was supposed to be a minor augmentation has likely left her paralyzed permanently. It's a cosmetic enhancement known as a Brazilian butt lift, made popular by the likes and looks of some Hollywood celebrities. But for Oklahoma nurse Rolanda Hutton, it was supposed to be a minor makeover.
And I didn't do this to be a video vixen or anything like that. I just went in for something, just a slight enhancement.
She left in a wheelchair after her January procedure at Dallas Plastic Surgery Institute and Dallas Day Surgery Center. Her attorney says Dr. Samir Jajurakar injected too much fat into the muscles above her sciatic nerve when she awoke and couldn't feel her feet or legs.
And I kept on feeling like something is wrong. Something is wrong. So I thought, I need to go to the hospital.
Attorney Les Weisbrod says instead they kept her at the Cloister at Park Lane, a, quote, luxury post-operative hotel, far too long.
She needed to be emergently transferred to capable people at a hospital, and that wasn't done.
Hutton says she may never walk or work again. And while she hopes to receive damages, she says she spoke out primarily to spare others from her pain.
But a lot of younger people, or maybe people my age, are doing things that may cause more complications, and they're younger and their lives are going to change forever. I want other women to see that what can happen.
And her attorney is seeking more than $5 million for long-term medical care and lost wages. We did reach out to all parties involved for comment, but have not heard back. Live in Dallas, Brooke Rogers, CBS 11 News.
Essentially, black women are risking their lives to look the way whites believe they should look to be beautiful. Because of white people's love-hate relationship with black bodies, they've commercialized the physique and they're causing black women to chase the white ideal of beauty. It was them that said, that is beautiful. That's what you have to look like. In all actuality, there are several different shapes and sizes of all sorts of people, different shades of blackness that are beautiful. White people said this one shape is what's beautiful today because tomorrow it'll change. Initially, Sarah Baartman's body was sensationalized and sexualized, while at the same time it was criticized and condemned. Now in the 21st century, her same body shape has been popularized, but only acceptable on white women, who are then beautiful and desirable. The curvaceous body features are considered inappropriate in white spaces when packaged in black skin. What's more, whites hold these racist ideals of black female hypersexuality based on their bodies. So those big butts and those thick thighs and those curvy hips make black women automatically hypersexual. And we have to remember that Brazilian butt lift's popularity has the most extreme sexual exploitative history that's racial at the core. The surgeons in Brazil use the BBLs as a tool to cure the ugliness of women, specifically black women, by encouraging surgical modifications to their faces and bodies to rid themselves of blackness. Then you had the influence of celebrities and musicians who glamorized and popularized the black female body shape by celebrating the black body and white skin. And we know that music specifically is one of the most influential art forms, considering how lyrics and sounds can control people's ideals based on the artist's perspective. This way, rappers and other musicians become dictators of black women's beauty standards. As a result, many black women aim to achieve the physique for approval and attention from black men who are then inspired by white society. It's like a cycle. It never ends. Because of their poor self-esteem, too many black women are literally dying to have large butts and thick thighs that white society said was beautiful. The worst part is that their desire for instant gratification outweighs the potential long-term side effects after the procedure. Black women have essentially allowed this patriarchal, white male-dominating capitalistic society to decide what's beautiful solely for their economical, religious, and political advancement, and to reinforce race, class, and aesthetics hierarchies. This is the epitome of white supremacy, which is why it's imperative for black women to break free of the mental grasp that whiteness has over their minds. It doesn't make any sense to allow other people to dictate what's beautiful, what's in style, what's popular, whatever, and then to actually try to materialize it. The BBL trend will fade, and a new fad will be born, and then it will fade, and another one will be born. So there's no point in chasing every beauty standard that's popularized. Chances are that the new trend has been conjured by some sadistic elites for personal interest, definitely not for the betterment of society. Therefore, black women, instead of conforming to new body fads, try to seek ways to appreciate yourself in a body you were born in and reject standards that aren't conducive to you. You don't have to believe something is beautiful because somebody else said that it was beautiful. You decide what's beautiful. You say that this hairstyle is in. You say that this clothing style is in. You say that, oh, I don't care if I did gain 10 extra pounds, 20, whatever it may be. I don't care how fat I am or how small I am. You decide what's beautiful. Nobody else can do that for you. And here's the thing. If somebody looks at you and they say, oh my God, you are fat. You know what you should say? You flat out tell them, well, guess what? Well, good damn thing you ain't got to haul my big ass around. I do that. So you don't have to worry about it. Thanks. Okay, guys. All right, so go ahead and leave some comments below. Do you agree with my commentary? I believe that Sarah Baartman's body shape is the catalyst for the white man's lust for the big butts and the thick thighs. Do you agree? In my opinion, BBLs were inspired to commercialize on black female bodies that white society hates, regardless of the nation those black bodies occupy. Because they can't exterminate the black bodies, they found a way to profit from it. And unfortunately, black society has fallen into the trap. They don't realize that these trends and these fads are orchestrated by people who make money off of them. Do you think BBLs are worth the risk? Do you think they're associated with women with low self-esteem? Because many women claim they get the BBLs to appease themselves. I don't believe that. Do you? Because I think they're doing it to appease men. Let's talk about it. Leave some comments. Let me know your thoughts. Also, if you have any topics that you'd like for me to cover, please send them to blackhistorystudent@gmail.com. This email is listed in the description section below. If you're interested in reading any of the books that I've referenced in this commentary, I've listed them in the description section below. And if you decide to purchase them, please do so using my affiliate links because I do receive a little commission for each sale and you will be supporting the channel by doing so. If you would like to read the article on this topic, please follow the link in the description section or visit blackhistorystudent.com. Finally, if you haven't done so already, like the video. If you're new, subscribe. And if you loved it, share it. Until next time, bye study group.